All right. After all that horrible research that I have put you through, however, it is the most important part, all that research. But after all that horrible research stuff that I put you through, now we get to start really diving into the anatomy of great content. Now, keep in mind, if you didn't do the research, you're not going to be able to create great content, period. You're just not going to know your audience well enough. You're not going to know yourself well enough. And you're not going to be able to do the things that I'm about to show you. But if you did do the research and you put the time in, you're really going to be able to start creating great content. I know it stinks. You have to do research, but most of it you only have to do once, so that's nice. But now let's get into using that research to actually create some great content. Here pretty soon, like I said, we're going to have our one thing. Now let's talk about sort of an overview of the things that I expect in a really good product. All right, so let's get going. First things first, this is sort of the overview. Okay, this is what a great product looks like and the things that it has. It's a simple problem people are dying to solve. We've talked about that. One problem, one solution. You should start having an idea after doing the research of what those problems are that your industry is really trying to solve. All right, so after that, a well laid out introduction. I'm going to show you how to do that. A well laid out step-by-step process. I'm going to show you how to do that. Your product should be consumable in a day. We want our folks to get the product read or watch this stuff, be done with it so they can take action on it. After that, something that I call a magic trick that all my products have, I'll explain that. It should also follow something I call my CFED method. We'll get to that towards the end. And a summary of what they just learned. And finally, you have this just awful thing that I call a blame-placing call to action at the end. Okay, so I'm going to go through each one of these really, really quickly so you can start getting an idea. Now, you can pause this at any time. I'm also going to be giving you the slides so you can take this stuff out because a lot of this section is actually scripts that you're going to use to write these sections of the product. Okay, so simple problem, all right? So I always like to say this in my head as I'm getting ready to write a product, okay? So you should have your one problem picked out, but this is what I like to say. Hey, I am an expert on this. So I'm an expert on getting rid of tension headaches for males 34 years old. I know other people are going to buy this product, but I like to be very specific. Now, this guide, this thing that I'm about to write, this instruction manual is designed to show males who are 34 years old how to quickly and easily get rid of tension headaches. Okay, now, I know that seems dumb to go through that, but if you can do that as easily as I just did it means you did the research. So once they read this guide, they're going to be able to retain everything that they just read inside their head from just one read through. That's the idea. So one read through, they become almost an expert on this, and you've transferred your information. It should be that simple and that short and sweet. Now here's the other thing. Just because they can retain it all, they also are going to be able to come back to your guide because it's sort of a bookmark for a collection of resources that they can access if they need them. So, I know a lot of things about online marketing, but I have a collection of books that I go back if I need to reference certain things because I don't want to keep all those links or all those cool little infographics in my head. I just want a place to go back. So, it's okay for your guide to have links that people need to get to. And that's a good thing. That's a reason for them to come back to your guides, and it provides long-term value as well as the short-term value that they get from reading your guide. We'll go through that here in a bit. So here's the introduction. This is basically my dead simple formula to how I have really good introductions. Okay, so have you ever wanted to get rid of your tension headaches once and for all? Okay, so you sort of fill in the problem up there. Hi, my name's Ben Atkins, so you put your name in, and I can relate. Then we're going to tell our story from our core creation manual, the Establish Your Humanity section. Let me refer back to this real quick so that you can get an idea. Remember in this part 2 of the core creation manual where we were talking about you, this is the Establish Humanity. You can write the section of your intro by basically listing this stuff out and rewriting this in your book. So, hey, I started with this, and I was just like you when I started, and I had this problem too, or I got good at this because of this. So you're going to tell sort of that story. After that, I overcame this problem when, and you're going to tell the expert positioning section, which is right down here. This is how you overcame the problem. Now that may seem silly, but for them to believe and them to really take in that you know what you're talking about and that you are the person they need to be listening to, you have to establish this stuff in the first part of your book, the introduction. So in this guide, this is the next section, this is what you're going to write. In this guide, I'm going to show you how I did it and how you can too. I'm going to do that by showing you chapter 1 title, chapter 2 title, chapter 3 title, chapter 4 title, and finally chapter 5 title. Now, in case you haven't figured it out yet, your chapter titles for your book should be the steps. It's by showing you how to do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and finally step 5, which is going to get you to the end. By the time you finish this guide, you'll have everything that you need to solve that problem. Let's get started with step 1, or your chapter 1 title. That's it. That's an introduction. That is a beautiful, short, sweet, to the point introduction so they can get right into it, but this sets the stage. This tells them, hey, we're going to solve this problem, and I'm the perfect person to do it. And by the way, this is the pacing. You frame exactly what they have to check off their list by listing the steps that they have to go through. And it shows them, hey, there's an end in sight. This is the things you have to do. Okay, so that's the introduction. Now we get into sort of the process of solving the problem. This is how you write the chapter. So once you set the stage, this is what you do. This is the main steps to writing chapters in your instruction manual. Okay, and each thing you're going to say, and well, not chapter 1 because it's the beginning, but all the chapters you're going to say, in the last chapter we covered, and you're basically going to put the title of the chapter or the main problem that you covered in the chapter. Now that you know that, we can start to focus on how to, and then you put the current chapter title, which is the next step. In this chapter, we're going to be covering chapter title. The things you need to focus on are, in each chapter, you got to think. So in each chapter, like let's say in this particular module, this is a part of a bigger product, but in this particular setup, I had to walk you through a couple things, okay? So there was 3 different sections. So you're giving subsections to each chapter. So let's say that I was going to teach you about how to do, really good subject lines. So to do subject lines, you got to do 3 things. So the chapter title would be email subject lines. But then inside of that chapter, I would say you got to know how to do headlines using this method. Here's another method. Here's another method. So those are your chapter subsections. So you're going to say, here's the things we're going to talk about inside of this chapter. So you're just breaking things down. Now, here's the key. You have to tell them why this particular chapter is important. If you don't, they think they can skip it. Now, just like at the beginning of this, whole thing you've been going through, I told you this is the most boring section, but this is why it's so important. This is why you got to learn it. All right? It sets the stage as to why they need to go through the pain of learning that they've got to go through. Have you ever opened up a book and they didn't tell you this stuff, so you didn't really go through it? You thought, I'll skip around. I'm a pro. This is why you have to establish that. Otherwise, they wonder why they didn't get something out of your book because they skipped something. All right. After that, you write the content for whatever that section is. So you start filling in those subsections. You write the actual content. Really, every subsection should relate to the next subsection. Every chapter should relate to the next chapter. They all have to connect. After that, in this chapter, we learned how to, this is your conclusion in every chapter, we learned how to, whatever the chapter title is, by learning, list your chapter subsections. What did you cover in each of those subsections? Like, what were the main points? And in the next chapter, we'll be covering how to, and you put the next chapter title. And in the next chapter, you're just going to repeat this process. Okay, so that's how we actually write our actual book. I know that seems simple, but a lot of people miss this, and that's why their books, their manuals, whatever they're putting together, their products, they don't flow. And if they don't flow, people won't read them, and guess what? They're never buying from you again. They'll go learn this stuff from someone who knows how to do this stuff. Okay, so after that, this is simple. If someone can't consume your content piece in about an hour, it's too damn long. And it's probably too big. Now, I know books, most of the books we read are really big, but listen, you got to think most people are coming to you to solve a problem that's been bugging them, and they want to solve it fast. So there you go. Let's keep this simple, keep it short. Once you get good at this, you can start making it a little bit bigger because you know how to keep their attention longer. But in the beginning, keep it short, keep it sweet. Don't go over. Try to keep it where they can consume it in less than an hour. Okay, so finally a magic trick. Now, this is something I have in all my products. And if you go back to earlier in this week 2 stuff, I gave you some of this. What are some little things that you can include that make your content piece insanely useful and seem like magic? In short, what's a new technique or tool that you can put in there that's a small piece of the entire process, the entire how-to, but extremely useful? So what I like is I always like to put in a killer app. I always like to put in a collection of useful links, a killer video or a killer infographic, something that's really powerful that they'll come back to your guide for. Okay? Now, let me give you some examples of this. Now, earlier I showed you Evernote. I showed you Flipbook. I showed you a couple things. Those were cool. Those, my core creation manual, you probably didn't know you were getting that, but that is something that you will look back on this chapter and be like, that is a useful thing that is insanely powerful to the entire process. Now, let me show you a few of these. in an abs guide I put together. This infographic shows a set of exercises you can do in a row that is really important. Now, this on its own is a great piece of content, but if I include it in a larger product about getting abs, I need to write more to have an actual product. But this is something people would come back to and refer over and over. This is kind of a magic thing. One simple piece that people are like, that's awesome. I'll come back to that. Okay? In one of my products where I had email marketing as sort of the key, we told them about a service called Zapier, which allowed you to do some really cool things with email marketing with all it could do. So it was a small piece of the course, but it was something that people were like, that's a killer app. I'll definitely go use that. And if they forget about what this is, because maybe they didn't use it right away, they'll come back to my guide to check it out. In one of my fitness programs, we have this thing called the 7-Minute Workout. There's an app that basically we made people download when they're on vacation and they can't do our workout. They'll do the 7-Minute Workout. It's such a small part of our course, but it's one of those things that gives people a very cool thing that they can use, and it's something they didn't know about. So there you go. The magic trick, that's basically what it is. Now, at the end, when you're done, you have to give a summary of what they just learned. So here's what I do at the very end of a book. You've been on quite a journey in the last few pages of the book. We covered how to, chapter 1 title. So what was that step? Then we went on how to, chapter 2 title. What was that step? From there, we covered how to chapter 3, chapter 4, and finally chapter 5. By now, you should have very detailed knowledge of how to solve the problem. Now, that's the first part of your summary at the end of the book. The next part is what we call the blame placing call to action, and that is this. If you don't tell someone what to do when they were done with your book and give them a specific time period to do it, then your book just gets read, they have the knowledge in their head, and they're never going to do it. You have to put the blame on them. Otherwise, they will blame their lack of success on you. So this is how you do that. So here's what we write. The only thing left to do is to take action on what you just picked up. With everything that we included inside and all the shortcuts, you should be able to start tomorrow and have your main result within this specific time period. I've armed you with everything you need, but I can't do the work for you. The rest is up to you. One more thing. I want to hear your success story. Write me at, here's my email address, and tell me your success story after using the information in this guide. I can't wait to hear from you. So here it is. You're saying, if you don't get a result, it's on you. But here's the other thing. I'm so confident that what I gave you is gold and that it'll work as long as you put the work in. I want you to tell me about it. Here's how you get a hold of me. This is another great way. If they need questions or maybe they thought you left something out, they can get a hold of you and let you know. So this is a very big thing. You are transferring the agreement. The agreement was when they bought from you, you were going to give them the information that they needed to solve their problem. But now that you've given it to them, you are replacing the blame back on them if they don't get the result. And that's extremely important to getting people to take action. If you leave this out, you're going to get blamed. They're going to say, I bought that product. It wasn't any good. I didn't get any results. Even if they did nothing from the product that you put together for them. So that blame placing call to action is very important. Finally, some key things you need to understand before we get into actually mapping out a product here. And the whole idea is, hey, I've got 4 things that I need to do to put together a great book. And this really sums everything up. Number 1 is the content. Was it good and unique? After everything I've shown you, you should be able to take 5 blog posts on email subject lines, read them, put them into your own sort of thing, and really start putting together something good. So you should have good content. Flow. I just showed you how to put together something and how to make it flow and how to write it so that it connected chapter after chapter. When we go through the mind map here in a second, I show you how to do that. You're going to see how it all sort of fits together. Exclusivity. This is something that when I'm reading, I like to feel like the person's talking just to me. So speak in a conversational voice like you're talking to one person. Remember, we started building in our research one person. I want you to talk in your book like you're talking to that one person. It makes them feel as if it's just for them. That's important because if they don't feel like they're talking to you and they feel like you're talking to a huge audience, you sort of lose that bond. Finally, we got design. We're going to be covering design in week number 3, but it's very, very important, and I'm going to show you how to do it in a very, very easy way. So just keep in mind, when you get done with your book or you get sort of along the process, content, flow, exclusivity, design. Those 3 things or those 4 things are in line. You're going to have a very good thing that's going to make people want to buy from you over and over again. Okay, so in the next section, we're going to show you how to map out your product so that it's one of those things that is easy. Because when you write, you don't want to be going back and forth. And I'm going to show you how to do it in the next video.